Welcome to the Wander Podcast. I'm your host, Gracie Hins. If you're new here, we are a podcast dedicated to sharing the stories of the outdoors, including conversations with athletes, creatives, and anyone else that I think has an interesting story. Before we jump in, if you've been a fan and you've been listening, if you could leave us a review wherever it is that you're listening, those reviews go a long way. Today, I am chatting with Kenza, a photographer, creative, and just all-around amazing human. We dive into how he got into photography, specifically cyclocross photography, and then we dive into the story of how he just put out a 5 years of cyclocross zine. So I hope that you enjoy this conversation. There are so many fun little tidbits in here, and without further ado, here it is. Okay, well, I think you know what question is coming up first.
Yeah.
But we have the question of, who are you and what do you spend your time doing?
I mean, what do I spend my time doing is probably a question lots of people want the answer to, but I am Kenza, photographer, artist, sort of maker of random things. I try to, I guess people have known me for working in cycling for the past 8 years or something. I sort, in some ways, fell into that. Well, not fell into it originally, but yeah, I'm sure we'll get onto that sort of in more detail. But that's probably what I'm most well known for in terms of work. But I sort of do a lot of other things: painting, design stuff, anything that keeps me busy.
Well, I kind of want to just jump into, your last project, which is this book about 5 years of cyclocross and photography. Do you kind of just want to take me into a little bit of what the book looks like, and then jump into some of the highs of the last 5 years of it?
Yeah, I mean, the cyclocross sort of work, when was that started? 2021 is 5 years ago. That would have been the first season I worked with the team that I've sort of now been recording for 5 seasons. I had been working in the UK mainly like track and road stuff, predominantly with one track team that was a really cool story and did all the World Cups with them and stuff. And then COVID happened and I moved to America, and the sort of I had been doing a podcast and had interviewed a bunch of people and sort of kind of got introduced to Raylan, who had been setting up this team. And then I'd sort of, a year later or so, randomly messaged her saying like, oh, I've got this idea, let's chat. And then it kind of just went from there. And she had been starting this team, and it was called Steve Tilford Foundation Racing. And I guess in some ways I kind of got lucky that I crossed paths with someone that was up for doing the sort of weird ideas that I had, and had some budget for it, and the sponsors eventually were interested. But yeah, I sort of then just fell in love with cyclocross. It was a sport I had photographed a couple of times in the UK and twice in the US before this. And it was very interesting. I'd done a load of gravel stuff before, which I enjoyed, but I kind of got bored of it quite quickly, I think, because it wasn't as interesting for me. It wasn't quick enough, and there was a huge amount of traveling. Like anyone like yourself, you know what it takes to do a gravel race, and long days, you're sort of waiting on the side of the road, and probably made the wrong decision as gravel was exploding and all the money was going there. But I kind of got bored of it. And yeah, I just really love cyclocross. It's so exciting. It's in a field. It's compact. The athletes are incredible. What they do is incredibly hard, and it's much easier to get close to the athlete, to sort of really push yourself with your photography. So I didn't have any idea of like, oh, I'm going to do this project. I just sort of fell in love with the sport. The team were great. We would do these sort of launches every year and have fun with it and do different creative stuff, whether it was with painting or we did a poster series once and did a little video for that. And we would always have fun with it, and the team were great. And then I guess this year had been 5 years, and I wanted to do something that was sort of, just to look back, I guess it was a sort of self-indulgent, sorting out my hard drives and looking through old photos. And I was kind of like, oh, some of these were actually half decent. And we had actually done 3 or 4 tabloids before. So each season we would print a tabloid for one of the sponsors and hang them out for free, which was really fun. It was really fun making something sort of tactile and real. We did a few print things as well. I've always enjoyed doing sort of making real things. So I guess it kind of was a follow-up of that as well. But yeah, it's a 64-page zine, and I picked 5 prints along with it, and I sort of put it together, just picking photos I liked through the 5 years and some from the launches we did. And yeah, it came out really nice, and people have really liked it so far, which has been really nice. It is easy to forget sort of what sort of work you're doing and if it's any good or people enjoy it, because a lot of it is commercial stuff and it will go off to a company, or obviously the athletes, you interact with them. But yeah, it was a really great thing to sort of put together, and now I've got that. It is a, who knows how much more I'll do with it. So if I never shoot it again, it's something I can look back on for myself.
Yeah. Well, and I'm curious, when you first reached out to Raylan with an idea, what was the idea that you pitched?
I can't remember I think the first thing I pitched to her was something to do with paintings. And we wanted to do this big project idea that was way too big to be able to pull off. In terms of, I wanted to have paintings as backdrop during the race, but it became, and we did a few test shoots. I did a test shoot with Lance, or Lance, as he would say. He would never hear me if I say Lance. He'd be like, who? But he enjoyed working with me. But we got this huge backdrop, and I got a couple of people to hold it up during the race. It was a mountain bike race, and we photographed it, and we did all these test shoots. And the idea was then that there would be paintings on it during the race, but it was too difficult to do during the sort of season. You needed a lot of help to get it done. There wasn't the time to really work it out. I think it could be really cool, and I hope someone else does it. But I think if you got in touch with the race organizers and actually got it on the banners on the fencing and stuff, because cyclocross has fencing all around the race, so there is potential to do it that way. But we did a sort of different version of that. I did some sort of just backdrop paintings, and then the first year we photographed them, and I took one to each race, and then I did portraits before and after the races of the riders, and then I got some fan portraits, people just walking by, which everyone just laughed at me saying free portraits, because apparently that sounded funny. I still don't really get why, but one of the riders, found it very entertaining. But it was really good, because it was taking these huge backdrops on a plane was difficult for a start, rolling up on a piece of pipe, and it looked a little bit suspicious, so that was interesting. But it was really fun to just have like a real tangible thing at the race as well. So it wasn't during the race, but we still got the different paintings, and it was just a really fun thing to do. But the first shoot we did was actually for a helmet launch for one of their sponsors. I'd never met her. She came down to where I was living, and we did this helmet shoot. And we used like mirrors, and we're like we tried to get it so it looked like there was just a floating sort of reflection. I don't know, they're somewhere on the internet. I don't know how good they looked. I haven't seen them in a while. But that was the first shoot we did together. Yeah, and then every year we did a different launch shoot, and I would come up with an idea. And the first one that was really sort of people were like liked, viral, whatever. Like it crossed a lot of eyes. Was the laundromat shoot, which I had seen loads of photographers have done shoots in laundromats. It wasn't anything new. I think it was just quite at that time in the sport, which had gone. It was on, some people would say, a bit of a downturn, a bit quiet. There wasn't as sort of much exciting things going on, maybe, and it was just a little bit different. And yeah, it was really fun. And it sort of became this tradition each year. We would do a weird shoot, and any new riders that were there, we'd make them do weird things, and all their friends would probably make fun of them online. It was fun. And I liked it wasn't, from my perspective, I was trying to make something interesting and engaging. You never know how that comes across all the time, but yeah. So, yeah, I guess the first thing was the painting backdrops, though, which I don't even know if there's some in that zine.
Well, and when you were coming up with the ideas for the shoots and incorporating it into the cycling world, had you seen anything else similar, or like seen any other teams doing anything like that, or was it just kind of this whole new idea?
Well, in terms of that specific project?
I mean, I think really, like, you look at the work that you've done and it's just so unique and creative, and like mixing a much more creative world with cycling. And I don't know, I just feel like I haven't seen a lot of that in any other cycling team. So like, was there anybody else that you were kind of like looking to in the more sports world, or was it kind of just coming from these outside ideas?
I mean, I think a lot of the time when you're coming up with ideas, I met one guy who was a photographer that I really liked. And I met him through Red Hook Crits. And Brian Werner, if anyone should go check him out, he's a very good photographer. And he gave me the one bit of advice that is sort of the only thing I sort of keep thinking of still to this day. Like, I remind myself of it. It's just like, keep doing the weird stuff that you want to make. And it's not that everything I do is trying to be something zany or weird, or it's some crazy new idea. I think it's more just like when you get one of these ideas, just go with it. And it's so easy to sort of stop yourself doing a certain idea because you're worried how it'll turn out, or you're not getting a decent response from it. Obviously, it's really hard to get these. I think a lot of people come up with these ideas, but it's not easy to do something when you're dealing with a team who don't have like a creative director in them. They're not, you're not sort of talking to creatives, you're talking to like a sports team who, I mean, they might have people in there that are interested in it, but their budgets are tight and it's difficult, and they need sort of maybe more traditional sports photography. So I think a lot of the ideas will usually come from like painters I liked, or it might be something I saw in a fashion shoot, or I mean, they come from really random small things. And this goes beyond the cycling work that I've done. Ideas just sort of crop up all the time, and then I'll sort of think, oh, how could that fit into something? Or I might think of something and then I don't really know where to put it, and then suddenly I'm like, oh, that would fit with that athlete, or we could do something there. Like I did it turned out to be a video. It was supposed to be a bigger thing, but it got cut. Called The Absurdity of Sport, and I did that with Sarah Stone. And that was kind of like, we had this idea, I contacted her, I got that idea from the movie The Royal Tenenbaums, and it was all sort of based around the scene of the grandkid, or no, the kids of Ben Stiller, whatever they're called, when they're like going off with the granddad, and they're like finally, they're in these like red Adidas tracksuits, and they're like going and misbehaving and having fun. And the idea didn't necessarily directly link to that, but it was more about sort of just doing something interesting and weird, and like letting go for an athlete who is often, athletes are often sort of very regimented, which, Ben Stiller in that movie, I forget the character name, he's just like freaking out, and he's always really protective. And it's this moment where they just like let go and have fun. So yeah, it went on to be something different, but it grew out of a random thing. I was just watching the movie and I was like, oh wait, that could work. And it doesn't always work. I don't know necessarily how my sort of original idea comes across. So I think it's just sticking with it and making something interesting and listening to the people that you're making it with. I think as well, like the athletes are really good to work with and freeing them up. So letting them, I mean, some of them just come to you with ideas, which is great, but also just empowering them to be like, actually, this is, you are part of it. You're the face of it. Like, let's work together on this. And I think that goes a long way as well. And especially on the smaller end of the industries and a lot of the smaller sports where these sponsorship things are huge. And, they're not getting thousands and tens of thousands of dollars. These are small amounts, and whether it's cycling or climbing or whatever, these aren't big industries for everyone. So if there's an opportunity to do something creative with someone, I think it's good to get them involved as well. So also freeing up and listening to people. yeah, ideas kind of come from anywhere. So it could be an athlete, could be a movie, could be a song. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's trying to actually do them, which I think is trying to follow through and finish them, which can be sometimes difficult, but it's
Yeah,
rewarding.
do you have tips and tricks on how to take an idea and continue following through on it?
Oh my god, just blindly, stubbornly stick with it. I don't know. There are certainly some things that get canned. I've had several projects where it's a great idea. You know, when you turn over to talk to a company, they quite rightly have a different priority sometimes, and their priority is spending a budget, not going over it, making sure they're ticking all the boxes. Whether you agree with them or not, they're not making the right decisions. It's like a company is their sort of their sole purpose is to make money for whatever the powers that be. So sometimes you just have to remember that you have to let go, and that can be difficult. So I think some ideas, if they've been canned, I've tried to then just, when I've got time, make them in my own time and think, okay, this isn't going to be an income project, you know, this isn't going to be commercial, but I think it's a good idea and I want to finish it. And I think it's important to do that because there are so many sort of ideas going around for me all the time that if I don't do any of them, it sort of beats you down slowly. So I think it's important that you do several things sort of for yourself. So yeah, that would be, if it's being rejected by and you're not getting funding, just change it slightly and make it smaller. And every idea can get really big. That's something that I fall into the trap. And like every idea becomes this huge thing that's going to change your career, and rarely is that the case. I think it's more important just to keep working every day and making something, whatever it is, that you're just getting, because you're just honing your skills on how to make something and how to understand colors or shape or your skills or whatever it is. And I think the creative process is the thing I'm much more interested in than the sort of business side, which is probably why I don't make loads of money. But it's, I think, long term, hopefully, a much better way to go because I think it's more rewarding, it's healthier, and also I hope that it will pay off sort of long run in terms of, I think, sticking with those ideas and being confident in your own creative ideas makes you more interesting for a potential client if that happens, or a customer, or whoever it may be, rather than playing it safe necessarily and never taking those risks. And then you just sort of become, you know, like numb to it, and you're not producing anything that someone else couldn't do. And I mean, God, anyone could do what I'm doing. It's not special. It's not unique. It's just I'm doing it. And I think that's the main thing. It's just you've got to keep doing it. So, yeah, that's what I would sort of just keep making things.
Yeah.
Yeah, the creative process is the thing I find the most interesting, I think.
Well, what do you feel like the creative process looks like? I feel like that's a broad question.
Looks like?
But if you're...
In what way?
Yeah.
Like,
I guess in the way of like, how do you, I mean, I think something that I struggle with is it's so easy to almost get wrapped up in too many ideas and kind of like sift out the ideas, if that makes sense, of like almost kind of like building in a framework in your life to help your ideas, take their best form.
yeah, I think it can be difficult sometimes to narrow down certain ideas and assign them to different projects. Because, as I was sort of saying before, not every idea is going to work for every company, and you have to listen to them. Because if you're needing income and you're doing a creative job for a client, your job is to listen to them and produce something for them. You can obviously give them input, and you might be coming to them with an idea, they're coming to you with an idea. So you can't always sort of scratch that itch of like, oh yeah, I was able to do this idea and follow it through. So I am constantly, I mean, it's probably a problem, but I'm like constantly coming up with ideas. I'll write them down, and then each one of them will be a life-changing, huge idea, which will, I don't know, win me the Nobel Prize for greatness or something. And then I realise it probably won't, and I need to do it. So I think, oh, actually, how can I minimize that and make it into something that I can produce and execute? So I'll be like, okay, these three ideas are great and they're really small and I can do them really quickly, and this one might fit with that client, or I'm just going to do these three next week, and this one is a bigger project and I'm going to take more time on it. So I try and organize them like that. And that, I think, seems to work for me. I'm trying to be much better at it myself, to be honest. This year has been a big thing. I've done a few small things. It's producing them and getting them out is difficult. Stopping is an important bit, and letting go of it. And then I've got 3 or 4 bigger ones, so we'll see. Maybe after at the end of the year, I'll have better advice on it.
No, I think that's good advice on just breaking it down a bit. I mean, I have the exact same tunnel thought of like, oh my gosh, this is an idea that's going to change an entire industry. And it's like, no, it's not. That's actually not going to happen. But like, how can you take it and just turn it into a micro project, which is much more reasonable and feasible? So I think that's good advice. And I feel like, yeah, I've done that a bit, and it definitely reaps a better end product yeah. So anyways, how did you get, I want to kind of go back to the like entryway to cycling, because you were working with the track team, and how did you get into photo in the first place?
Yeah, I come from a very creative family. I grew up with my grandparents, my mother and my brother, and I moved in with my grandparents and my parents. They live in this art studio in the countryside in the UK. My granddad's a painter, my grandmother was a writer, and my mother was a teacher. So it was just, everyone was making things all the time, but it didn't feel like anything. It just felt very normal, and it was very lucky sort of my childhood. But I guess I sort of for some reason, I thought, oh, instead of being a rebel and being like, I'm going to go and do something creative and not make any money, I was like, I'll go get a real job, which didn't work out either. But I was determined to like not be creative for some strange reason. And I played sports and different things.
Wait, what was this real job?
Well, I don't know. It was like, I just thought, I would get it was a sort of hypothetical. I'll get a job that grown-ups have and earn a salary. It was never there was never much thought to it. It was just like, I'm going to be a grown-up with money. And yeah, it didn't suit me that well, and I ended up doing a bunch of random jobs and jobs which I actually loved. By the time I got in, I went to university and stuff. I was like, I want to work in advertising, but I never. I was just, I don't know. I sort of jumped from job to job. I ended up working for a fashion editor for a while, and then I was just sort of wanted to do something for myself, and ended up wanting to start a cycling clothing brand for a reason I cannot remember. I think I just got into cycling, and then me and a friend did a big trip from Canada to Mexico. We were going to start up a brand together. So I started doing sort of content for that, because we were going to sort of basically, it was like building a website, making content, and then there was a few products with it. Because we sort of, I guess, grew up both enjoying skiing movies and things like that. So we were sort of making just fun stuff, and then we were sort of trying to expand that. And it didn't get that far because, I mean, we worked on it for a while, and I got to the point of talking to manufacturers and all of that, but then it sort of got to a point I was starting to realize, like, I really love this creative stuff. Of course I do. I've been doing it at home forever, and I'm actually quite good at it. It brings me a lot of joy. So whilst we were making all this content, I got in touch with a few people to, like, this track team, to go and do some photography for them, and it was going to be on the brand website. And then I suddenly was like, wait, I don't want to do this business thing anymore. Like, I love it, and I still think it could have been good, but I was like, I want to take pictures and just make things. So I gave myself 6 months or so to, I was lucky for people around me to support me, and I was like, I'm going to just do this for 6 months with no pay. I'm just going to go out and shoot and see if I really love it. Then try and make money from it. And I don't think I even got to the 6 months, to be honest. I think I started getting money for then. And, you know, it wasn't loads of money, but I was getting, oh, okay, I can actually do this. So it kind of just, it was very slow sort of realization over years of like, oh, the thing I actually really love and makes me want to get up and go out is creativity. And photography was that outlet and has been in terms of an income. But it's more than that. It's anything, any sort of image making, drawing, painting. And so yeah, I finally got there, and I was like, okay, it took me all this time. I was finally like, oh, I understand. And I'm kind of glad it went that way, because I worked for a few sort of small marketing companies and things like that, and I understood that side of it a little bit. So when I was talking to clients, I understood that they didn't need a, you know, prize exhibition thing. They needed to sell their product and take your photos. So it does help. And but yeah, I think I got there in the end, and I think, you know, apart from COVID disturbing everyone's work, there's been a few U-turns and changes, and I still don't know what I'll do when I grow up, but we're at a point now where it's sort of making things and people seem to like it, so I'll stick with it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you have Safety Pin Studios.
I know, yeah. That
Where
kind
did
of
the name? Yeah.
that sort of became a thing last year, and I was suddenly kind of, without saying it out loud, quietly under the table, admitting to myself that I want to be just an artist kind of thing and just make stuff. And I wanted to make this sort of platform where I could just put stuff out that I make, and then hopefully sell stuff. Um, but Safety Pin literally just came from, I think my mother wears a safety pin brooch because she went to school in like the punk era, and the safety pin was like a symbol of that. And she just kept wearing. I think my brother gave like a silver one, and she wears that. And I guess it's a kind of nod to my mother who brought us up to be very confident and creative. But then also it had a lot of connections with like sport and music and art, and it just became this sort of thing that worked quite nicely for a name of the studio. And it also meant that I didn't have to, I could make it up at any point. So if I changed my mind, I could just be like, oh, I need something else. Yeah, but it kind of worked and I liked it. And I usually sort of hide behind something, so it didn't have to be my face or, although someone, did convince me to use my name more. So I did actually like put my name on a few things. And my good friend, I actually did
a name behind things.
I know, yeah, I know. My friend who I actually did a art project with, which is on safetypin.studio, for anyone that's interested, called Imaginary Title. And I was like, we've done this exhibition and we did this talk and we put a book out a couple of years ago. And we were sat doing some, I think we were just writing to people to invite them to we did this evening and a talk question and everything. And he was like sending out emails and I was doodling or something. And he was like, oh, you should put it on your website. And I was like, oh, yeah, I guess I haven't updated it in a while. And he looked at my website and I didn't even have like my contact information. I didn't have my name on there. It was like, as I said earlier, like the business side of it, it's not sort of the best. Yeah, if you're listening to this thinking this will make me, if I listen to this guy, I'm going to make a fortune and follow his way. Don't take my advice if you want to make a fortune. But I do have my email on there. I think I have to double check now.
I think you do. I feel like I recently looked at it, and I think that there was a full contact section. Yeah.
And now, obviously, I'm just flooded with emails and job offers every day. So,
yeah, build a website, and then everything else will follow.
Exactly. Yeah, that's all we got to do.
Yeah. What are some of the hopes, goals, and projects that you're working on right now?
Right now, as we speak, I'm working on a project to do with trading cards, which has been really interesting. I'm kind of finishing off a few things with this Cyclocross zine. A few people have bought them, so I'm going to send those out soon with the prints. And there is one. I have about 8 projects I want to do this year. I mean, it would be boring to go through them. But one of them is in cycling, which I'm really excited about. And it's for the people that I've spoken to about it. probably will be just glad when I've done it. I've been talking about it for like 3 or 4 years and not done it. And because some projects do just take a long time to sort of actually get off the ground, like it's not the right time to do it. A job comes in, people are busy who are involved in it. And the project is based around sort of our obsession as a society with cars and how cyclists are sort of treated as objects on the road and not people, and a lot of people are hurt and killed on the road riding their bikes. So I am doing a sort of photo series which now I've said out loud on this podcast to make sure it's done. But I do want to do that by sort of springtime. But this trading card project is really fun. I've loved it. I've got a lot to do for it, and that's a painting series. But yeah, I've got like 3 or 4 painting projects going on. Lots of small projects to go out, and these are all going on safety pin through the year. And a lot of small like making things. I did some embroidery stuff last year and some textile stuff, and I'm doing loads more of that because I really enjoy that. So yeah, there's loads of stuff that's creativity. A lot is linked to sports. Some of it isn't. And that's what I really love. Like with all of the work that I've done, especially this cyclocross zine, like as much as I fell in love with cyclocross, loads of people come up to me and they ask me about cycling, and I don't, like, I'm not one of these, like some of the people that you've interviewed who are so inspiring and incredible, who are like devoted to their craft and the hobby that they do, or the industry that they work in. What was the one I listened to last? The British photographer, Sam Platt. I listened to that one.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was so cool. And he's obviously, and his work's amazing. And he's like, he knows so much about timing and photography and the two together. I am not like that. I don't know loads. I couldn't be a voice for cycling like he is for climbing. I couldn't I'm not attached to an industry like that. I kind of think maybe that's interesting. I don't know. I don't know if other people see that.
No, that's what I was going to say. I think that that's where like you need the different voices and different outlooks on a sport, because that's what's going to keep it interesting. And I mean, I kind of feel like I'm in the same boat with that, of like I have so many interests in so many different sports and, recreationally participate in all of these things. And I think that there's some things that I can get into the really nitty-gritty detail of, but honestly, like I look at like trail running, and the things that I go off and talk about are like how epic it is that you can like draw a line on a map and then go run that, versus the ins and outs of like some of the other cultural elements of it, where I think we all have a different I don't know. I think it's more interesting to have these other things and maybe not be so invested in it all the time, and then partner it with somebody that is.
And yeah, I completely agree, and I think it brings a different element to it. When I did one sort of, or a couple of series podcast thing, that it was supposed to be a small thing that was attached. The first series with cyclists, and the second series was with creators. And I interviewed a guy called Kevin Horn, who's this amazing skate photographer, and he has made this amazing magazine called Analog, and it's all shot on film. really nice guy, and I interviewed him.
Mm-hmm.
I can't remember if it's in the podcast or if it was when we were chatting afterwards, but he was talking about skate photography that is very particular. Like, skate photographers know how to skate. They know what looks right. They know what angles to pick, and it's very particular. And he was saying you can't really be a skate photographer unless you're a skater.
Mm-hmm.
I found that really interesting because I obviously completely agree. Like, if you want to be a skate photographer, you need to know the same with like surfing, and because the image that your body is making is obviously so important to them. I wouldn't want to go into it and do it justice, but there's obviously such importance to imagery in those sports. I also kind of was thinking afterwards, I was like, well, it's kind of cool, or I would be interested in seeing some of my favourite photographers go in and photograph that and just see what they do. You know, to see, you know, someone like Emily May, who you associate with big brands like Nike and Tracksmith, and she does loads of stuff around ballet and things like this, and running, and she's done cycling stuff with Rafa. It'd be great to see her go and shoot. I mean, maybe she does know loads about skate. I don't know, but I'm just picking a name out of the hat and like see her go and shoot and see what she picks up, because there'll be a friction. There'll be there might be a conflict of like ideas, and that's interesting. So I really like the idea of going out and working with an athlete, and it's kind of more interesting when they don't think they're creative at all, and you sort of just go out on a shoot and you walk around. I'll usually try and make it a longer day, and obviously athletes don't usually like doing that, but if you can, squeeze time out of them, because I haven't met many people who don't, after they get over the fact that if they're not used to having a photo taken, I haven't met many people who don't really get into it. They just love it, and they start coming up with ideas, and they're like, oh, let's go over here, or I can do this thing on the bike, let's do that here, and they start sort of really getting involved, and it just, I think, creates better work, but also it just makes the whole experience more fun, and you know, that is a large part of it, but I do think it creates better work as well. And I think me coming in with my expertise and maybe a little bit of knowledge of the sport, and then they're coming with, you know, an expertise of cycling or whatever it is, they then say, oh, actually you shouldn't shoot that because we would never do that and it'd look weird, and people in the industry will be like, no, that's not right. So then it's like, okay, cool, thanks, now you know that. And then I might say, oh, can you do that? And it just like, it's fun working with each other. So that's always, I think, a fun place to be, rather than me coming in being like, I know everything about this sport. So, yeah, it's good to not know anything is maybe the summary of that. But it's good to just work on your feet and actually work with the athlete.
Yeah. Okay, going back to your podcast really quick, I feel like we have to touch on it because there's a lot of really good conversations that you had. But do you want to give a quick little backstory on it and kind of,
I had done, it was called Finding Space podcast, and I had done a portrait exhibition for a mental health sort of social enterprise charity thing for a couple of years, and that was a kind of, we went into the city in London and we were photographing this sort of big CEOs and directors of these companies who were opening up about a story about whatever it might be, abuse as a child, suicidal things. It was incredibly open stories that were really moving, and I had sort of pitched to them this idea of doing an exhibition where we would like put the printed pictures in the offices instead of them being digital, and people would have to stop and have a little text underneath. And it went really well, and people loved it. And I did that for a couple of years before COVID. And I guess out of that, I really enjoyed sitting down with the. I'd always made sure that we had, because these people were really busy. So I was like, we need an hour. We didn't need an hour, but I was like, we need an hour minimum. And I want to sit down and like talk to them, because I mean, these people were sharing some pretty heavy stories. I didn't want to just walk in, smile, take a picture, and leave. So I tried to at least sort of connect to them, talk to them a bit. I obviously think that helps the portraits that came out. It was a great experience. And sort of out of that, I just loved that format of going and talking to someone and taking that picture and almost talking to them whilst I'm taking the picture. And it kind of, I wanted to then do something around mental health and sport, and take that idea of the taking a portrait, doing an interview, and that's kind of where it came from. And I just reached out to a bunch of people who I didn't know. Some of them I did. And everyone said yes. So I was like, oh shit, I'm going to do it. And yeah, I guess it was also great. It's a great way to meet people and build a network in a world you don't know. All these people were just really great. They had loads of time. It was so fun doing it. I had some great conversations. I really liked the photos that I took. And then during lockdown, I obviously couldn't do, because in the UK we had an incredibly strict lockdown during COVID. I couldn't go out and I couldn't do anything. So I interviewed creatives, and then they shared like a self-portrait or a photo that had been taken of them. There were a few of them.
Got it,
There was
yeah.
only, I think, 6, whereas the cycling one, I think there was
Okay.
20, no, 15, I don't know. It's been a while, but yeah, there were some really, really great conversations. And also, like, they invited me to their homes. They were, which was a little bit weird for some people, you know, just turn up in this room. You just turn up. But it was like, I think it was such a good way to do it. And it was pretty scary, because you don't know these people, and you're turning up at the house, and you're just like, oh, you know, we've done this interview, we've agreed to do this interview, and they've obviously, they know it's happening, but you're like, I think it helps just like they were in a comfortable place. It wasn't like a press junket or a sort of commercial thing, which obviously they were talking about mental health struggles as well, and concussion, and which came up a few times in the cycling series. I think Ian, I don't remember what the first episode was, but there was one with Ian Boswell, and he spoke a lot about concussion. He'd been through some pretty major crashes, and yeah, it was great. I think I wanted to keep going with it, but it sort of stopped. But I think it was a really great way of getting out of my comfort zone in some ways, but also sort of pulling together the photos and the conversations. Maybe selfishly, I just enjoyed doing it, but that's often the way with most things I do. But I think people really liked it as well. So I'm glad I did it.
Is there anywhere that it lives on? I mean, it lives on Spotify, but is there any like secret website?
The website is no longer in existence, but they are on Safety Pin, I believe. The first series photos are all there.
Okay.
Um,
Okay.
and
I'll have to look at that.
then all the interviews, I think, are still. I mean, I wouldn't know how to take them down. They're still up there, I think, unless they. Um,
Yeah, the
go.
back end of trying to get things up and down on all of the audio platforms is kind of complicated.
Well, yeah, there you go. I wouldn't be able to work that out. So finding space, go to where you listen to your or whatever they say. See, I was never very good at that bit. But
Did you feel like in the conversations, I mean, I think something that I think is cool with a lot of the conversations that I've had on the podcast is that there's, regardless of if it's an athlete or a creative, there's kind of the same story arc. Did you feel like you were finding that in a lot of those conversations? Or more specifically through cyclists and then, yeah.
I can't remember them all really well, but the thing that really stands out when I think back on that time was I sort of because the intention of the podcast was to talk about mental health and sport, and I think that it was obviously growing more and more in the media, and more people were talking about it. This was back in. I would have done the interviews in 2018, I think, or 2019. And I think there were a lot of overlaps in just people felt maybe neglected. There wasn't much understanding around them as people, and they were just like athletes. I think there's a huge amount of probably, still like difficulties around how athletes are treated. So it was definitely there were some similarities between the interviews, and that was interesting in itself. But also, I think I just found that I guess I didn't think about it going in. I did all these interviews in or most of them, like a really short amount of time. And I was going all over the place, traveling, interviewing these people, which I wasn't, I was nervous doing it. And they were sharing some, sometimes intense stuff, and it was a big conversation. And then I think I was in the north of England, and I'd driven through the night, done and 2 interviews on the way. And I did this interview in the morning, and it was really short. And the person was great. They were perfect. Like, I can't. But I didn't have the same interaction I did with a lot of the others. And they were very busy, and we did the shoot, and then they just sort of ran off. And I just sort of broke down. I was like, oh my God, I ruined that. And I just had a bit of a meltdown. I realised I was just exhausted because I'd also just been listening to these people talk and give a lot to me and open up. And you sort of suddenly, it dawned on me that I was like, oh, this is actually like a real thing with importance. That we're not just sort of thinking about some brand. It was, people giving up their time, and it sort of just hit me, and I was like, oh wow. And I think once I had that sort of meltdown in a car park in the north of England, I was like, it made me appreciate it a lot more, and it was before any of them came out. And I was suddenly like, oh, actually, I'm proud of this, and put in a lot of work for it, and a lot of people, the people that gave up their time, put in their own time. They didn't have to reply, and I think now, especially, there are so many podcasts. People sometimes forget that they are still this amazing thing where people give up their time and have these conversations. And think it's such a great format for that. So I do think out of those conversations, as you say, going back to what you actually asked me about, like there were similarities to them, but it was more the thing that stood out to me was more just the overall impact it had to me, and then I hope that came through to the people that listened. That it was, it was a really great experience, and I think anyone should do a podcast. I think it's stupid when people are like, "Oh, everyone's got one," and I think they're so amazing, and they can work for certain projects. And I think certain interviews or certain projects really work well with a recorded interview. And even if it's just one, it's on the internet forever. Like, who cares? Like, that's a great thing to be out there. And the same way there are loads of photos out there. I just think podcasting and recording interviews are just another great outlet for people to be creative. So, it was. I don't know, answer your question. It was really interesting to do. And really
No, that's a good answer. Yeah. Well, I think it's also just a cool way of like when I was at the ski mountaineering race in Utah, I was sitting down and I was at the table with a journalist that was interviewing, I think, Anna, and it was just interesting because that came out as then just like a written interview, and there's a different sort of presence, I think, of like you might be asking the same questions on a podcast, but it's in a much more just like, okay, we're actually like taking the space out for this rather than here's somebody that like I'm just trying to interview you really quickly. And I don't know, it's definitely put me into a loophole of thinking around written interviewing and like podcast interviewing and the time and space for both of them. And I've taken and translated some of like these interviews and put them in writing, but it's really cool if you want to be able to understand the way that somebody talks and the mannerisms. It says a lot about the person. You know, it's like, okay, are they saying something fast? Are they saying it slow? How do they approach this topic? And you can just learn a lot more about somebody by listening to them.
Definitely, and I think that was why I wanted to. I could have, for those specific interviews that I did with them, I wanted to do it in person. I wanted to take their photo and that be part of the experience. It's not part of the podcast. You don't, in terms of like, I'm not taking the photo whilst I'm interviewing them. Which would be a pretty cool thing to do, maybe, if you can make that work. I think it just made
you need a second person.
Yeah. I need an assistant. But no, it made the whole experience, I think, more powerful. I could connect with them more, listen, understand them more, spend a bit more time with them, which helped for the photo maybe more than the interview, I don't know. But I mean, it probably did help with the interview as well, because I don't know if I would have been, I listened to your first podcast you did, and you have seemingly much more natural, like, professionalism. Whereas I had to make sure I was like record.
I don't know about that.
Well, no one's ever going to think that about themselves. But I know it was. I had to. The fact that I went there and chatted to them a lot before and got to know them helped a lot more for me, because I also edited myself out of it. Like, I'm barely in any of them because. I was just like, I don't want to dominate this conversation. I don't know. I just think it is a great thing. And I think you're completely right about understanding them and how they talk and where their inflections are, and it makes the story more rounded. I love it when they have, like on the New York Times or the New York, when they have an old podcast, someone reads the article, which isn't exactly the same, but it's a writer or someone. I think that's great. Like, I mean, who doesn't love being read to? Yeah, so I do like when there's a recorded element to it.
Yeah. Okay, wrapping up a little bit, where do you feel like you have found a lot of recent inspiration from, or has there been anything in particular that you've been like, oh my gosh, wow, like that's so cool?
I mean, there are loads of things that I think are super cool. I mean, schema, I think is super cool. I didn't really know what that was until I saw your thing, and then I saw it was going to be in the Olympics. And I'm like, oh, it's my new favorite sport. So that was something that I thought was super cool and I didn't know about. In terms of creative sort of stuff, the last couple of years, I really got back into just like drawing and painting, and that's going to loads of exhibitions, seeing loads of art, seeing live music, just trying to get out and experience real things, the real world that's out there and not online. I love looking at painting. I think they are, for me, the art form that I don't know how to phrase it without sounding awful, but like speaks to me the most, I guess. There's just something about standing in front of a painting and seeing how it's been made and like standing up close. And it's obviously great. I've got loads of art books. My shelf over there of art books fell down the other day because I built it. And it's probably got about like a ton of art books on it. They're very heavy and they all fell down. So I've got to put it back up. I've got a huge amount of art books and I use them a lot for work, like referencing, just looking, pick up an art book, whether it's Stuart Davis or Francis Bacon or Goya, whoever it is, I'll pick it up and I'll just look through it and I'll get loads of ideas from that. I get a lot of ideas from painting and that's great, but there's nothing beats standing in front of a painting and actually seeing like how the paint's applied. And I think it just is the best art form. It's my favorite one. It's not the best, but it's my favorite art form. So I get a lot of inspiration from that. Whether that then translates into a painting is not always the case. It might be photography. I've got a lot of inspiration from paintings when sometimes I'll just look at paintings before I go and work. Or listen to music. I don't know, it's probably all just a bit of like managing my anxiety rather than actually then translating into the art form. I just love looking at something inspiring that is not necessarily related to. I wouldn't go and look at like someone else's photography before I went out to a photo shoot because I'd have a nervous breakdown. And I'd be like, I can't do this. They're so good. Whereas if I look at a painting or listen to music, I guess there's enough separation from it. But also I love the movement of a painting and the freedom of it. That I do try and translate into the cyclocross stuff. That's why I loved it so much. Like, it's so energetic and so expressive. the sport is you're so close to it, and it's so interesting being there and seeing how hard the athletes are working. The mechanics always made fun of me that all my photos are out of focus, and it was like an ongoing joke, which I really appreciated. But I love that, whether it's blurry shots, like playing with the shutter speed or double exposure. A lot of that just comes from, again, like trying to create that feeling of movement and energy and painting. And none of it's new. It's not like I haven't come up with any of this stuff. But instead of going out and being like, I want to recreate this photo, how this person has done it, it's usually me looking at something and then being like, I don't know how this camera works, but I'm just going to hit it for a while and push some buttons and then play around with it. And that's usually how I come about it. So those are the things that, painting is the thing that really speaks to me when I'm working, and is the thing that in the long run I wish I was. I know people could connect with the most that I make. So yeah, I'll just be sharing more of it this year, I think. Oh, definitely. It's the only painting is the only time when I'm not overthinking everything. It's the only time when everything is quiet. Photography, I get really stressed about, and I'm running around thinking, this, that.
I feel like it's inherently stressful.
I do.
You're literally running around trying to like do it quick, and there's nothing super calming about that. I mean, I think that there's a certain like flow state that I tend to reach when you are once you like get over that stress hurdle, but it is inherently stressful. And then you have to get back and edit really quick, and I think there's other practices in which that's not the case.
No, I think you're spot on, and also, as you know, like dealing with a race situation, you're not in control of the subject. So you need to, anything. So you need to make sure you are in the right place. And like I would always walk around a cyclocross track without my camera and just like look at everything, because I feel like the camera just like stresses me out, and I think so many photographers just forget to like actually look at the subjects, and I think it was a really helpful thing for me to do that, like walk around and just like, I mean, kind of going back to what you're saying about getting your inspiration from, just like looking at the sport that is happening. And it is really cool. Like when you go to an elite sports event, whatever sport it is, and you actually just spend a bit of time just looking at it, whether you're just spectating or talking to an athlete, it's hard not to be like, this is cool, this is so amazing, they're so good at what they do. Yeah. And you kind of need to do that rather than just be like, do this, do that. Obviously, sometimes it's just the job. That is another thing that really stands out to me in terms of getting inspiration, is just like actually treating them like people and getting to know them and learning a little bit about the sport.
All good words. Okay, last question for you. Do you have any last words, tips, tricks, or wisdom pieces to leave people on?
Knowing my grandfather, he will give anyone advice at any time of day. He loves giving advice, and he is actually annoyingly right about a lot of stuff. So, no, don't do that. He's 94 and he doesn't want to be bothered. He gave me the advice. his opinion actually on how people are educated is, I kind of really do agree on with art, is that, kind of going back to what I was saying, is that people just don't know how to look at things, I think, a lot of the time. And he gave me that advice of, I mean, from a very young age, of just like, he would teach you how to look at things. And it sounds so stupid because we obviously do it naturally. It's a subconscious reaction that we do. And everyone sees differently, whether you have good vision, bad vision, we all see colours differently. So learning how to look at something is really, I think, important. And that's looking at it and breaking down what catches your eye. Why do you stop to look at that? What's drawing your eye? What do you want to take away? And then learning how to translate that into your image is the difficult technical bit. But you have to know how to look at something first and take it in and take all those data points sort of into your head and translate that really quickly. And that's what a photo is, really, and an image. You're just looking, someone has taken the time to think, I want to capture that moment, and maybe they're trying to communicate something with it or not. Like, it's, if you don't look at, and I mean looking at it through, without the camera, but also, like, I don't know if other people, I don't know if you find this, but sometimes I'm like looking through the lens. I always shoot through, looking through the eyepiece, but sometimes I'm like not properly looking. I have to like stop and be like, wait, actually take this all in. And it maybe to others that sounds really weird, but I just think that's a big thing for me, like, and that's why I walk around without a camera and like actually look at, take it in. What am I picking up from it? Do I like the colours of it? The shapes? Trying to then, if you're shooting a sport or something, like trying to translate the energy that you're getting from it. So if you're, having a really in-depth conversation about with someone, and then I'm doing a portrait, I shoot it a certain way rather than a race. And so, yeah, I would say that's probably the simplest thing I can think of. And then probably, if I'm giving you advice, you should talk to someone else, really. I don't know. Don't come to me for career advice.
Thanks so much for listening in today. I hope that you enjoyed this conversation, and if you want to stay up to date with all things Wander, we are Wander Studios on Instagram, or you can check out our Substack if you want to read these interviews. And yeah, that's us, and I hope that you have a lovely rest of your week.